Around the World with Dane Waters is another beautiful, glorious Tuesday. Well, I say it's a beautiful, glorious Tuesday, and you look at the picture behind me and you think that, no, it's kind of overcast. Well, no, you know what? That is make-believe. I'm looking outside, the sun is shining, which is here in the UK, which is where I am. It's kind of unusual that the sun is shining. But so let's just chat about a couple of things before we get to our guest today. First of all, as always, thank you for joining us. I really do appreciate it. And by the way, spread the show. Tell more people about this show. You know, on Tuesday morning, what else better do they have to do than to listen to me pontificate about crazy things around the world? So talking about that, it's a new day, a new Trump day, tariffs. You know, we always talk about tariffs, what's happening around the world. And one thing is interesting, you know, I do a lot of work in Taiwan. Because I believe in freedom and democracy in Taiwan, and that China should leave them alone, basically, and the world should recognize them as an independent country, which is what they are. But anyway, what's interesting is that Trump put a 15% tariff on on Japan, a 15% tariff on South Korea, but then put a 20% tariff on Taiwan. And this is at the same time he's talking about, hey, Taiwan needs to, you know, to be able to have enough money to build the military to defend against China, yet he's punishing them financially. So, I don't know, just doesn't make sense to me, which is a topic of another show here in the very near future. But tariffs, tariffs, tariffs. Now, is it good for America? I don't know. I'm not an economist, but we'll see. Now, the interesting thing in America is, you know, we always, every quarter, we have where the government announces the jobs data, like how many people have been employed and how many people are in employment. Well, you know, this has been going on forever, and the numbers came out the other day. They were not very good. They showed that the employment was going down. But what does Trump do? He just calls his own governmental department lying, and he fires the head of it. You know, it's a crazy world. It's a very surreal world where if the government puts out data and the president doesn't like it, he just fires the individual. It's kind of crazy. Anyway, so that's what we have going on today. I can't wait to talk to our first guest. I'm trying to wait for him to call in, but let's take a quick break from Around the World with Dane Waters, and we'll be back with our first guest, Keith Voss. Thanks. Welcome back to Around the World with Dane Waters, and I, believe it or not, it's going to come as a shock to you, I am your host, Dane Waters. Anyway, we're very honored to have the Right Honorable Keith Vaz with us today. Keith has been on the show before. He is a former member of Parliament in the UK, the man who knows everything that's happening around the world, whose opinion I trust, and a guy who just really can help us understand what's going on. Anyway, Keith, thank you for being with us today.
Thanks, Dan.
So let's get started. You know, we have several things to cover about the UK today. First, I'm just going to ask your general thoughts on what is the state of things in the UK, both domestically and internationally. Are you, as a British citizen, happy with where things are?
As with any political system, the issue is who leads the country and where is it going. I've known Keir Starmer for a number of years since he sat on my committee when I chaired the Home Affairs Select Committee. He's obviously a very serious, caring individual. But what's missing, and I think what people demand, is leadership. Where are we going? Why are we doing these things? So some will say you're born with leadership. Some say out of the heat of war you acquire leadership. Or, as we know, leadership is suddenly thrust upon you. So he's led organizations such as the Crown Prosecution Service, but somehow the transition from lawyer to politician is not allowing him to map out where he goes. If you talk to people about who the great leaders are, and who have they been in the last few years in America and in the United Kingdom, people automatically go to two names in the UK, Tony Blair and Margaret Thatcher. And in the United States, they probably say Barack Obama, even though they don't know why they say Barack Obama, but they say Barack Obama. And now, of course, whether you like it or not, they also say Donald Trump, because he leads from the front. You know where he's going. He says what's on the tin. So I think for the British people at this moment in time, they've opened the tin, the Starmer tin, and they have found something different to what they saw written on the tin. And that means they're not clear where the country is going. So, however, if you talk down to any visitors, anyone from any other country, Indonesia, Romania, Latvia, any of these countries, and you say, are you pleased with your government? They'll always say, no, they're not. Find me the guy or the woman who says, I love my Prime Minister and I love my government. It's very rare that you find that. And so I think this is an issue that affects not just Britain, but also the whole world. Where are we going and why are we doing this? I think that's what we need to find out. So there's a big vacuum.
I agree with you. I mean, doing political work around the world, it's really hard to find, as you said, any country where people stand up. I love my government. I love them. They're doing a phenomenal job. And also, as you know, as somebody who's been in power and in government, it's hard to be in government. It's hard to lead because you can never make everyone happy. It's just the reality. So let's talk about the 10, and I love that analogy, by the way. So what happens next? I mean, do you think that, I've been seeing newspapers and covers of magazines that have Farage on it. I mean, is he the up and comer, or, can the Tories come back, or, is Starmer going to make it, or what's going to happen there?
Now that is the $64,000 question. What is going to happen? So I think the way we do it is we take it election by election. And of course, we now have, for the first time, credible parties on the right, Reform, and credible parties on the left, Your Party, or whatever it's going to be called. It's got so many members. I remember once having a conversation with Jeremy, and I introduced him to the president of the Romanian parliament. And he was due to go and address a meeting of the Parliamentary Labour Party. And his staff kept coming in to say, you need to go. The whole of the Parliamentary Labour Party was there. But he was fascinated with this guy who was telling him that the Romanian party that he belonged to had over 250,000 members. And Corbyn was trying to ask why. Because the interesting thing about Corbyn is he is a leader, there's no doubt, because people respect him. But I've seen him up close and personal. And his biggest problem is he can't make decisions. And one of the great things about the left is they don't actually have to be in power. I suddenly came to the conclusion after 40 years in politics that the left don't want to be in power. The right actually do want to be in power. And the centre ground don't know what to do when they've got power. So for the first time, we've got these parties. They're not even on the fringes. These are substantial parties now. They don't seem to have any figures apart from their leaders, Farage and Corbyn. We don't know who's underneath the surface. And they are doing phenomenally well in the eyes of the public, which means the public has decided, that they want change. Now, you had this in America with Robert Kennedy Jr., and he was absorbed into the mainstream. You don't have anyone on the right doing this. You will be old enough, I think, to remember Ross Perot and the fact that Ross had arrived. We had a bit of excitement when Elon Musk said he was creating another party. But in America, it's not broken yet in terms of the political structure. I mean, politics may be broken, but that's a normal phrase for politicians to say about the other guys in power. So they've not done it. We've done it first. We are now becoming a European country, even though we're not in Europe, a multi-layered country with multiple parties, not two. And this is fascinating stuff. So you need to stay longer and broadcast more, Dan, from the UK, because this is your case study as to what the future might hold for the United States.
Well, first of all, I have to agree with that because, I always talk about in the U.S., we have the duopoly of the political parties, the Republicans and the Democrats, they control everything. And we've always talked about in America, at least many of us, that we need to broaden it out. People need to have more choice in just two parties. And I do think you're right. I think you see you have the Conservatives, the Labour, the Reform now in the UK. So I think the next election, national election, will be quite interesting here. But because we have a Nigerian audience, I have to ask about Kemi. Kemi Badenoch. So what do you think about her and how her job and how she's doing for the Tories?
Well, I think she reminds me a lot of William Hague, person of great talent and ability, but just elected at the wrong time. She is phenomenally good at the dispatch box compared to Keir Starmer, but I'm afraid she hasn't cut it with the rest of the country. And again, it's because we don't know what she wants to do to the country. So she's obviously been elected by the members of her party because of her politics. She's right of centre in the Conservative Party. But she's dealing with a Prime Minister who's got a majority of over 100. And she's dealing with a right-wing insurgency, which William Hague never had, by the way. He never had this party on the right. They were called UKIP then, and it's all about coming out of the EU. So I think she's a very effective performer. I'm very proud as someone who was one of the first 4 black and Asian MPs in Britain, that the Conservative Party has someone who is not the traditional leader. She is of African origin. She is from Nigeria. And she has obviously now able to run a British political party. That itself is a terrific achievement, to be able to do that. But however, if you don't write what is on your tin and say, open me, this is what I'm going to do, then it's very, very difficult. It's interesting, yesterday, while waiting for a friend from India, I went to Fortnum and Mason in London. And I was interested in the way in which they sold their goods. They're very clear on their tin what's inside. You can get Indian Darjeeling tea, you can get fusion tea, you can get, very clear. Packaging is very clear. The problem with our political parties is that they haven't followed the retail. They're supposed to be retail. They haven't followed the retail model and said what they want. So that's Kemi's problem. As the first person of Nigerian origin to lead a British political party, that is massive, absolutely massive. She probably would have become a senator or a congressperson or a governor if she was in America. Very articulate, but unable to explain where the Conservatives currently stand. That's their problem.
Well, and we have to get on some foreign policies issues here in a second. But one thing about Kemi is that there's been a rash. Well, I'll call it a rash. Maybe you don't think it's that much, but of defections from the Conservative Party to reform. I mean, I think that is to me, a clear indication of if a leader of a party, people are leaving that party. I think that's an indication of the leadership. I mean, do you think that the Tories are in serious trouble as far as their future is concerned?
Yes, I do. I think there will be a core. I think that people vote Conservative like they vote Labour. I remember these rows we had about when Corbyn was first elected, whether or not we could take the name Labour, or whether we should leave the name and not form another party, but the rump of MPs should go elsewhere. I think most politicians want to hold their seats. I think also they would like to make a difference. So it's combining those two that make you decide whether you want to defect or not. There will be more defections, there's no doubt about that. And at the end of the day, I think there'll have to be an alliance between Reform and the Conservatives. Getting an alliance between your party and Labour will be more difficult, because I don't think your party will get the seats but they will stop Labour winning a lot of seats. So they will be spoilers, if you like. They will keep the seats they've got, maybe get one or two more. But at the end of the day, people vote the label still. And unless you've got an identity, it's very difficult to vote the label.
No, I agree with that 100%. But let's switch to foreign policy because that's one of your that's in your wheelhouse, as they say. Let me start with, well, let me just ask this question. Do you think that Keir Starmer has been a good foreign policy prime minister so far?
I don't think that anyone can, well, the answer is no, not particularly. I think he's flip-flopped over the Middle East. He first of all gave Israel the green light to defend itself in whatever way it wanted. And now he's rowing back and saying he's going to recognize the Palestinian state because of what's happening there. The natural consequences of giving Israel the right to go and do what they want is what we have now. This is what was always going to happen. And therefore, I think this flip-flop is bad for him personally. I think the Ukraine situation has not been resolved. Every time he, Chancellor Merkel, and Macron want to do anything with Ukraine, Donald Trump moves in and says, I'm the boss. I may not like NATO, you're not spending enough, but I'm the boss and I want to do this deal. So, he's out and about, but he's not cracking the nut as far as the decisions and the solutions are concerned. I think there was a point when he was nearly there, the summit that he had in London following the humiliation of Zelensky. The humiliation of Zelensky in the White House, his sudden arrival in Europe, and the whole of Europe backing him, that was when Europe should have then taken the lead with Putin. But they've been forbidden from speaking to Putin. Trump won't let them talk to him. They can't buy oil from him. They can't buy gas from him. So how do you make a deal? And, you look back to the times when you had Angela Merkel as Chancellor, a real Iron Lady, real leadership there. And she was able to talk to Putin as well as leading Europe. Now, that's what Europe has got to do. But, of course, President is after his Nobel Prize, and he needs this particular scalp. He needs to be the guy who gets around that table in Reykjavik or in, Vilnius or somewhere like that, or even Greenland. He likes Greenland. And he needs to sit Putin down with Zelensky and himself and have that troika and stop the war. That's what he's after, that photo call. And it seems to be eluding him. So The answer is no. It's a long answer, but no, he hasn't been particularly successful. He's looked good on the international stage, but most leaders do.
No, yeah, that's the thing. We need leaders, strong leaders, as you were alluding to earlier. And sadly, we don't have that many. And I was optimistic about Starmer, especially, as you said, after what happened with Zelensky in the White House, but it's kind of like petered out. So, but let me ask you real quick, go to what Trump was talking about Trump. He's talking about how he's very upset with India for continuing to buy Russian oil, and he's threatening greater tariffs on India because of doing that. Do you think that's the right move for the president to do?
It's absolutely the wrong move. He's taking on 5,000 years of civilization, and he's taking on a prime minister, Modi, who is absolutely secure. Modi will be there after Trump has gone, okay? And therefore, Modi doesn't care. Modi has been very strong about saying, we will not be dictated to. It's a new form of colonialism. They've just got rid of the British. Just got rid of it. 70 years out of a millennia, out of 5,000 years of civilization, it's just got rid of. They just got rid of the British. And they're not going to be told by the Americans where you can buy your oil from, when they've had a long-standing relationship with Russia. India and you go to Goa, and I suggest you do that. A lot of the people who go on holiday in Goa are Russians, because they want the sunshine, etc. We very recently have started pass a law saying you can't buy property there unless you are of Indian origin, because the Russians are coming and buying up all their property. Modi is a strong leader. He won't be pushed around by Trump, and they'll take the pain. in order to make sure that this was they secure their sovereignty. I mean, India will not give up its sovereignty to the Americans. What a cheek! What a cheek! Telling a country of 1.4 billion people. The danger for him is that electorally, locally in America, a lot of the Indians were moving over to the Republican Party. And the one thing about Indians in America and Indians in Britain is they love their motherland. And the motherland is not Britain and America. It is India. And if they see India being treated badly by Trump, it'll have an electoral effect. And I'll tell you, I didn't think Mandani was going to be elected mayor. I think he's definitely going to be elected now because he's the kind of person who people will vote for because they can stand up to Trump. So the Indians in America are a big electoral base, and they were moving over to the Republicans from the Democrats. And you have people like Nikki Haley, Vivek Ramaswamy. I know they don't regard themselves as Indian because they're Americans, but they are of Indian origin. Ro Khanna, Raja in Illinois, Pramila Jayapal in Seattle. They still respect the Indian lobby, and they will not like what's happening.
Well, listen, I agree with you 100%. That's why I love having conversations with you, because and I say you're a brilliant man because I agree with you. So that makes me a brilliant man. I don't know. Who knows? Listen,
this is self-admiration. I'm not sure it's allowed.
Oh well, listen. When you're the host of the show, just like you have a show, you can self-admire yourself all day long. You may be the only person admiring yourself. Anyway, Keith, it's a pleasure. I greatly appreciate it, and thanks for being on the show. And I'll have you back soon. So
thank you, Dan.